pull up chat. All right, do we have a CC? Awesome, thanks, Spacey. Okay, so Wyatt had X-rays taken last Sunday to recheck the condition of his lungs, and his internist is on vacation this week. He's the one that receives the results from the radiologist and then comes up with a plan. So he told me that he would be checking his email while he's on vacation, which is awesome of him. So he got back to me today with the results of Wyatt's x-ray. So first things first, oh my goodness, Wyatt. He's so full of energy. First things first, the aspiration pneumonia is unchanged. Still looks exactly the same as it did 2 weeks ago. So even though clinically we have seen Wyatt transform right beneath our eyes, the X-rays show no improvement. There's a couple of other things that we can think about as far as, next steps go and how to interpret the results. One thing that the radiologist has put forth in his report is that what we are seeing on the X-ray is not, in fact, active pneumonia, but possibly what we had talked about, that there may be scarring or some kind of permanent damage to his lungs. And so, in that case, antibiotics are not going to do anything to clear up his lungs. And so, the question is, well, how do we determine whether there's an active infection or whether this is just some kind of permanent scarring? And the way that they do that is what's called a wash. It requires anesthesia. They insert a scope and basically get some sample of what's in his lungs, and they grow it in a culture. So that's the best way for us to know definitively whether he has an active infection or whether this is just some kind of, permanent scarring. So that's, of course, very scary. You know, there's a lot of risk to anesthesia. One being his size, two being, you know, that he does not have fully functioning lungs. He also has a serious heart condition. So, you know, there's definitely some, or a lot of anxiety around that. That's not the only option. That's the only option that will tell us for sure if it's an infection versus scarring. And the culture will also tell us which antibiotic will be effective against whatever bacterial strain he has. So that's one thing. A second option is to try a different antibiotic. We've tried 4 now. There is a very heavy hitting broad spectrum antibiotic that is injectable that we have not tried yet. It covers the majority of bacterial infections. It's pretty much the one that doctors save, you know, until the end. When there really is nothing else that works, they try this injectable one. There's not a lot of risk to that. There's no serious side effects, and it's safe for his size. The only, possible side effect is some GI upset. But I would say, if there is a risk, it's that once you introduce this antibiotic to his body, he can become resistant, and it's possible, that if he were infected down, with something else down the road in his life, that this antibiotic would no longer be an effective option for him. So that's sort of the risk with using that antibiotic. The third option is, he's currently on Clavamox, which is a pretty mild broad spectrum antibiotic. He's been on that for about 4 weeks now. And we could stop the antibiotic entirely and watch his symptoms. And if he does not resume any kind of breathing problems or, sort of the symptoms he had before he was hospitalized, we could intuit that it's not an active infection and that it's scarring. That's probably the least reliable test that we could do. It doesn't really definitively tell us what's going on with his body, but, it's sort of, it's not a huge risk, I would say. So, those are our options. I don't have an answer today. This is something that is going to require some conversation back and forth between me and the doctor. The anesthesiologist, they have a board certified anesthesiologist there. I have questions, and so the decision has not been made yet. But those are our three options as far as what to do next. There is another wrinkle in this, and that is his last two X-rays. I was hoping that this was not going to continue in this past X-ray, but it has. His last two X-rays have shown fluid and gas in his esophagus. And what that can mean is Megaesophagus, which is a condition kind of like megacolon. If you guys have been around for the kitten, the two that we've had with megacolon, where the width of his esophagus is wider than it should be, and he doesn't move food, like the actual control mechanism of the esophagus itself is not able to adequately move food from his mouth down to his stomach. And so what happens is that food gets trapped in his throat, essentially. And that can cause aspiration, of course. It can cause regurgitation. And so one of the things that you've seen in the last couple of weeks is him regurgitate. It looks like he's spitting up. You know, he doesn't have any kind of abdominal, you know, it's not the stereotypical, you know, of a cat who's about to vomit. It happens instantaneously. You know, he just has, all of a sudden food just flies out of his mouth. Many of you have seen that and confused it with drool, because it very often happens after he eats. He'll kind of go off, and then, you know, very often he's sitting up on here, cleaning himself, and then all of a sudden he just regurgitates. And so that is a very common sign of Megaesophagus. Shortened, people call it Mega E. If you don't want to type out the whole word in chat, it's very often shortened to Mega E. And, you know, it's, you know, very possible that he has this condition. And so I'm not sure what the next steps are as far as either testing him further for it or treatment options. I know that similar to megacolon, I think even cisapride, which is used with megacolon, I think that's also used with Megaesophagus, if I remember correctly. But, you know, there are some treatment options that try to help the cat, you know, move food to their stomach. And, you know, eating from a raised bowl is a common therapy. You know, there's kind of many different things that you can do to help them eat. But I'm not sure how you properly diagnose it. I think in adult cats, you do what's called a swallow test, where they put barium in some wet food, and they have the cat eat. And while the cat's eating, they're taking many images of the entire process. And so they watch how the barium moves through the esophagus and into the belly and all of that. And so they watch for maybe pockets where food is getting trapped, or any kind of regurgitation, or things like that. And so a swallow test is, you know, would be, I think, extremely helpful. It's something that I continue to ask about. And I will continue to ask about, so far I've been told that he's much too small, that, you know, they look at cats, you know, at least like 7 to 8 pounds before they can get, before they can do this test. But I am very curious, you know, to maybe see if there's exceptions to that, because I think that would help us quite a bit if we were able to do a test or something similar to it. So, you know, that's sort of the summary of everything that we got from this most recent imaging. I don't have next steps yet. Like I said, the internist is out on vacation this week, so I have, you know, emailed him back some questions, but I'm, you know, certainly not going to be bugging him. He's back on, I believe, Sunday for a little bit of time. And so, you know, I don't know if I'll hear from him before then, but, you know, Wyatt's not in any kind of distress. He doesn't need any immediate intervention. He's actually doing quite well. If you have not been keeping up to date in the last 2 weeks or so, he is totally eating on his own 100% of the time. I leave food out for him in the room, and he eats a watered down wet food mixture with no assistance. He drinks water all by himself. He is not able to eat the dry kibbles on his own. He also uses the litter box 100% of the time. We don't even have pee pads in the room anymore. So he has successfully taught himself to potty in the box, and he is completely off of oxygen therapy and breathing fine, not struggling with heavy breathing or rapid breathing. And so, you know, he's in the best health that he's been in, you know, probably 2 months. So, you know, we're not in a place where we need, you know, to immediately figure this out or make decisions. And, you know, but some of these decisions that we do have to make are pretty scary. And, you know, they all come with some level of risk. So I will be weighing all of the options heavily and coming up with a plan along with his doctors. All right, that's my update. What questions do you guys have? Thank you, Spacey, for writing all of that out. Loomis, he is going to continue the antibiotic for now until we come up with, you know, next step plan. So he will continue on that Clavamox until, you know, we determine what we're going to do next. I don't know about his paws. It's not a priority right now. I mean, it's just not. No, the doctor has not recommended one over the other. No, he will not be having more oxygen time. He does not need it. He has plenty of energy. Mega E is manageable in some cats. It's much easier than others. I know some Mega E cats who have required a feeding tube because theirs was so severe. And others I know, manage it fine just having a raised bowl. So there's definitely levels of severity. I'm not sure why you guys think he needs an extra boost on oxygen. If it's because he's sleeping right now, I mean, he has been running around for almost 2 hours. So, these kittens are sleeping too. Is there an order of priority for his conditions? I'm not sure about that answer yet. One of my questions to the doctor was, does the Mega E affect our treatment options, for his lungs, so, I think, we'll kind of see what that means as far as I'm not sure. I'm not sure what needs to be treated first. If he has to go under anesthesia, I did ask about that at our appointment, whether there were if he is doing well under anesthesia, can we get a CT scan real quick, that sort of thing, and that is a possibility. Of course, if he goes under anesthesia, there will be a board certified anesthesiologist there monitoring him the whole time, and so it's a relatively quick procedure to get the culture. This CT scan also doesn't take very long. So, they'll be monitoring him, and yes, it's possible that if he is doing well, that they can get some imaging that we haven't been able to get. Should the water bowl be raised? That's a good question. I don't think it can hurt. That's probably a good idea. He's been active constantly. I mean, I don't know what to say about that. you know, yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's especially interesting that during his exam this past Sunday, the internist pulled up the images from his first hospitalization, which I think was back in May. He's had a series of 5 Xrays, and or 5 series of Xrays, and the internist pulled up the one from the very first one when he was hospitalized versus the one on Sunday, and they look almost identical. And then he was pulling up each one with the same view, and it just looked the same over and over again. There just wasn't any remarkable difference between the images back in May. And so it's been 2 months that he's been on antibiotics, not always the same antibiotics, but 2 months of antibiotics. It does make you question if it's just scarring. He is gaining weight. It's slow, but he is gaining weight. Yeah, there's quite a bit of information about Megaesophagus online. Lots of different therapy options and suggestions and things like that. There's something called a Bailey chair. I think that's what it's called, where they're forced to basically eat kind of standing. And so, the idea is that gravity is moving the food down. Those typically work better in dogs than cats because dogs, don't mind like sitting in a chair and eating. Whereas, cats, you guys know cats. So it's a little hard to get cats to cooperate with the Bailey chair, but they do make them for cats. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what we'll end up doing. There's definitely a lot to look into. Yeah, seeing a cat eat in a chair would be something. Yeah, if it does turn out to be scarring, so the lungs have to be at about, what was the percentage that the internist said? I think he said something like 70% damaged before you see, or 70% affected before you see them struggling to breathe. So his lungs are at like 30% maybe affected. And so, he can have scarring in his lungs that might be affecting parts of his lungs, but he still has like 70% that still works and is healthy. So he might not have any clinical signs with something like that. So I don't know that it will affect him. The bigger question is that what's causing his heart issue, versus, his heart issue being sort of its own thing. Because, if we can't clear out the lungs, does that mean that we can't reverse his high blood pressure? I don't know. Yeah. The fluid in his abdomen has disappeared, which means he's no longer in heart failure. The right side of his heart is still just as enlarged as it was previously, even on the medication. And his hypertension is just as high as it was. So the one thing that the medication has done is he no longer has the fluid in his abdomen. Mary, he sure is complicated. I mean, I thought I had a handle on his medical conditions, and then we throw in Mega E on top of everything. I mean, it's like, my gosh. And we could, he could be developing some kind of leg problem. Like, the boy is a mess. That's what we know. He's a mess. No, I don't believe that antibiotics or the Mega E has to do with his. It's not blood pressure the way that you think of like pressure in your arms. It's specifically increased blood pressure in the heart. I mean, in the lung. It's very specific to the lung. It's called pulmonary hypertension. So the pulmonary part is the lung part. He's snoring right now. Yeah, Tracy, exactly. I've heard of holding the cat upright. You have to do it for quite a while, like 20 minutes after they eat, 20 to 30 minutes. And I just can't, I don't know. I can't imagine a cat sitting still for that long, like letting you hold them for that long. And then, like you said, you have to be there every time they eat. I just don't know if that's feasible. I mean, if it's required, I'll do it, but I just don't know if that's going to be one of the options. Yeah, Wyatt might allow me to hold him after he eats. I don't know. He's good when he's tired. It's just when he's feeling playful and energetic, he's very wiggly. All right. All right, that's all I got. I'm gonna see if he wants to go back to his bed. Here we go, bud. All right. Thanks again, Spacey. I will update you after, I have my back and forth with the doctor and we figure out next steps. Until then, stay the course.